I'm Paul. I'm part of the Mutiny team, and we came for this cohort. You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Stuart Bowman. I've been here for 2 months with the guys. I'm building a thing called Satellite. Yeah, you guys might have seen it at the pits the other day. So, where's Pablo?
He's right there.
Oh, what's going on?
Go. Income.
Nice. Yeah.
My name is Pablo.
Oh, you like for a lead? Hey guys, sorry I'm late. Yeah, I'm Pablo. I've been running, so we are just doing introductions. Okay, so the first thing, yeah, I'm a Nostr developer, whatever. The interesting stuff is that I've been working with Gigi for the past year, but it started 2 months ago on the software engineering. The software engineering was is still today's the last day of the first cohort. It's sort of an experiment. We started with the idea of what happens if we bring together a bunch of developers and we teach them how to write for Bitcoin, how to develop Lightning, how to develop stuff for Nostr. Then we realized that that wasn't quite what we wanted to do. So we changed it to what happens if we bring people that are already doing these things and we just get them together. I'm a huge Beatles fan, and the Beatles, 1967, they did the Magical Mystery Tour. It was an album that they recorded on the go. It was a bus. They put together a bunch of artists of all different kinds and walks of life, and they just recorded to see what happens. So it was kind of that idea of just bringing together a bunch of people that are currently shipping stuff. They are already productive. They are already outstanding at what they do. What happens if we bring them together? So it was a lot of, we have no idea what we're doing. There was, and we said that we had this imagery of the guinea pig. Everyone in software engineering was a guinea pig. We didn't really know what we were doing. We had some aims. We started calling it an unhackathon. The imagery typical of a hackathon is a bunch of people coding all night, writing code that they know in 48 hours is going to be completely discarded. That was the opposite of what we wanted. We wanted slow growth in any direction, but build something that it can have a chance of making a real difference. So we did a lot of walks, a lot of meat has been eaten. It was a tragedy. And Gigi refers to it as distributed cognition, which I think captures really, really well. We all have a bunch of ideas. What happens if we speak them and we mash them together? What comes out? So I'm super excited. Even the first day, you were telling me on the very first day that the night before software engineering started, you were at a bar and you were having insights by talking to other people that were in the cohort. That was the whole thing. Was that moment all the time?
Yeah, I think I've got probably about like 6 months of thinking done in about 6 weeks. So it's pretty good. I think one thing Gigi said when he was like, if it saves somebody from building the wrong thing for like 5 years or 6 months or just wasting time doing the wrong thing, that's like maybe the biggest gain of this whole thing. And I definitely feel that because I've spent a lot of time building the wrong stuff. So when you get that feedback from other people and they're like, that is a terrible idea, absolutely terrible idea. That is the greatest gift someone can give you. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of that. And the idea was developers, we tend to be sort of like we isolate, we just look at the screen, we just write code, and we lack a lot of feedback mechanisms into what we make from the point of view of your idea is terrible. No one wants what you're building. To, hey, maybe you can build it like a slightly different way and it can be 10x better. And our baseline, this was something that we kept on going on and on, is that our baseline is the people that are coming, they are already productive and they already have a bunch of hours in front of the screen writing code. So probably the gain will not come from 10% more time looking at the screen. Probably the gain, the exponential gain, will come from this, figuring out what not to do or in which direction it might be better. So I'm super stoked. We've been seeing like the stuff that you Paul have been working on. It's like super experimental, and I absolutely love it. Maybe we want to talk about it later, but it's stuff that our hope was building, that something will be built that would not have been built otherwise. And I have the inkling that there was a lot of that. So you want to talk about maybe like briefly the stuff that you were working on, the hyperlinks?
Oh yeah, well, really early on, there was a presentation from Neil, who's a designer. He wasn't able to be here for the whole cohort, but he just explained some stuff about chat as a UI, and it was just really good motivation for us. We'd been thinking about putting some chat into Mutiny. We decided just to go for it, and chat as this kind of universal UI, basically almost like when you don't quite know what to do. It's this generic UI that you can do anything inside of. So we wanted to have like a way to request money to another user in Mutiny. So we kind of got permission. Like, this is actually a good idea from a really good designer. I started working with Neil and brainstorming on a kind of a new look and a new direction for Mutiny that was a little more social, that we'd already been working on, but this gave me a little bit more like permission to go after it. At the same time, just having all these presentations about Nostr, I'm mostly working in Bitcoin, but I love Nostr and I like to play around. I made something called Hyperno, where you put HTML on Nostr. You can make like your own guest book. Try to kind of inspired by like MySpace, when you could actually customize your social media experience instead of Facebook or Twitter, where your social media experience always looks like what a really high-paid designer in San Francisco decided your social media experience would look like. What if we embraced and there was some phrase, but it's not about nostalgia, but bringing the things that we love about the old web to the new web. This is like, in some sense, the next web, and that customization and personal expression. So that's still a work in progress. I made something open source. A really cool part of that was so the basic cadence of the cohort is Wednesday we would go on some sort of walk or do some sort of activity to get us talking, and then Friday was demo day. And so every Friday there was this little pressure, like, yeah, maybe I've been fiddling around with something throughout the week, but now it's Thursday night and I don't have a demo. Okay, I'll work a little harder and I'll get something just to that demoable state. So that's something I want to bring back to Austin, trying to get that demo day, because I work with a lot of people who are building things all the time. I think that encouragement of, hey, you could do a 5-minute demo about this if you just buttoned it up a little bit more and made it presentable. And also that gives you a chance to try to express your idea, get the feedback, and then that loop continues on Wednesday or on one of the many nights that people go out to the bars.
Yeah, the Friday demo days, it was a bunch of hours everybody demoing their stuff, and then barbecue. And that model, I really liked it. I was thinking throughout the cohort, I was thinking, maybe it doesn't work, but would it work if we do like distributed demo day, where on Fridays on Nostr we all publish, okay, this is what I did, like this is the stuff, it's fully broken, but maybe it'll get somewhere.
Hashtag demo day.
Hashtag demo day, that's right.
I'm down. I think that was great motivation.
I don't know if others had this, but on Fridays, I would be working on something throughout the week. And then on Friday, I realized, like, I implemented Nostr Wallet Auth, which is something that the Mutiny team came up with. I think it was Ben, right? And I would realize that by Friday at demo day, there was like 1% chance that I would get there on time to actually show something that maybe works. So 2 hours before demo day, I would start working on something completely different, but that I know that I will get there on time. And I actually I did Shipyard DVM, which is a data vending machine for scheduling posting of Nostr events. For anyone that doesn't know the Gibber, that was like completely ununderstandable. Shipyard DVM, I literally did it. Okay, I won't get there on time. I know I can package this in a few minutes, so I did that and I demoed that. And now it's functional, it's being used, which is kind of cool.
I think we should also mention that the last demo day of the cohort will be this afternoon at 3 in Learning Bitcoin, so you can everyone can actually see what we've been building and talking about here.
Yeah, that's a lot of cool things that are going to be shown, and it's cool because it's a small audience, so you can interact. If one demo piques your interest, you can go and have a 1 hour talk with the person that developed it. So I think that's gonna be cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I just need to get my demo working.
You have a few hours. You can do it.
That thing you said, I think you mentioned it, that the philosophy of like not building for nostalgia. I think, what was it? It was something like trying to build towards something like without nostalgia nor utopia, like not letting your not like create like an image of a thing. Like I think it's kind of what like sets Nostr builder community apart from a lot of like crypto or Web3 stuff, is that like it's more experimental and we actually do things. Like it's really not about convincing people that something's going to work. It's about, well, let's find out, you know? Like that's what was nice about that whole like build show, like that weekly loop. It was, I think I worked on like,
You missed the talk part.
oh, the talk. Yes.
Build, show, talk.
Build, show, talk. Right. Although I was kind of like, usually on the demo day, I was like building like right up until like 5 minutes before I had to go on, like trying to get it to, not because I broke something like 10 minutes ago, but I think like just that process of kind of making contact with reality instead of the story that you're telling about it to people helps you just get to where you're going a lot faster. And it sort of it's like the classic advice that's given is just like, you know, when you're trying to start something, is like launch it, see what works, and then iterate on that. Don't spend like 6 years in your, you know, cave, like creating something that you're going to like gift to the world and it's total perfection. Like it never really works. So yeah, I've probably worked on maybe 3 or 4 different little sub projects of a thing, but at the end I can look back and be like, oh, those all of those mistakes clearly led to this kind of like synthesis that I seriously I think it would have taken me like a year to figure out what to do, but it was just an acceleration of that, having like people around you. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it's definitely refreshing that no white papers are written during the cohort, just a lot of code.
Yeah, it's not starting with that mathematical proof. I'm going to design a system from the top down, and everything will be extrapolated from my beautiful crystal of a design. Yeah, it's this experimentation on the edges. I like popped into a talk that you and Richard were having. Maybe you could explain some of the CDN idea and like you know, one of the great dreams of the world is IPFS. It's so cool. It's this hash-based content addressing. So if I know the hash of a file, if Game of Thrones.mp4, if I know the hash, then I can look that up. And that's a stable identity for a file of any size. And so you could theoretically ask anybody, hey, do you have this hash? No? Okay, do you have this hash? You know, torrents work a lot like this. But IPFS was this grand design for distributing content this way. And, you know, Fiatjof has a pretty famous piece about why it doesn't work. And so, you know, you and Richard were experimenting on some stuff that maybe we have a way of doing it in a lossy way, like expecting some failure, but the best effort way that might actually work better.
Yeah. Actually, Robert was telling me the other day, he was laughing. He's like, Paul keeps calling me Richard. But I think you're talking about Robert.
Sorry, Robert or Richard.
Hazard 149. That's what I use.
Yeah. Complete the doxing. So
We can't handle
now we have the mapping.
Gotta have some random letters and numbers, otherwise no one knows who you are. But yeah, we're building. Robert published a thing called it's called Blossom Protocol. Blobs simply stored on media servers. That was kind of an idea that we've kind of been working on. Him and I are actually both working on satellite now. So that was a huge upside of this for me. Was when I came here, I was like, you know, if I'm like really, really lucky, I might find someone to work with, and I did. So that was maybe the biggest thing for me that came out of this, because I don't really know where else in the world to find a critical density of Nostr people. It would take so long to bring people up to speed on, you know, maybe not the technical aspect, but just like kind of like the, you know, like the overall, like, yeah, the ethos of it, exactly. So Yeah, that was kind of the high level thing, and then you mentioned the CDN thing. Blossom's quite interesting because it's like a way of making it's like relays per media. So Nostr relays right now have the ability to send text notes to each other, and you can pass around basically signed JSON, but we're all still relying on centralized hosting providers to host the audio and the video and the heavier files. And so your Nostr is really not fully decentralized. It's not really sovereign until you have a way to stop relying on Amazon S3 basically. Nostr.build using S3. I have a thing called Satellite CDN, which is basically also using S3. It's just the Cloudflare version of it. But Blossom's really interesting because it creates a way for like the satellite communities to become their own media hosts, and they just have an interoperable API. So you might have dozens and dozens of different servers that act as an interoperable way to pull files based on hashes. That's what's amazing about content addressing is that this is not the location of a file. This is actually a fingerprint of a file, and you can sort of swap out the location part. So you can have just like how people in Nostr, you say like, this is probably where my notes are. You could say, well, these are the CDNs I use. And then you can have your app just go down the list, like hit like 10 different CDNs and just like see if you can find the file. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff around like caching it off, on your actual machine. There's a bunch of there's like a local relay thing we built for satellite. But I think there's like a lot of promise to that.
Something interesting that you said about like, where would I find somebody like Robert? Like, I was really impressed by this cohort. Like, I go to a lot of Bitcoin conferences. I see a lot of same Bitcoin devs who work at like companies. We take turns at being at the same companies. So seeing like 21 dudes I've never met before that are like killing it and like super good at what they do, super passionate, super on mission. I'm curious how you found all of them.
It's insane. We were really surprised by the caliber of people that applied. We were like, holy, this guy applied. It's absolutely incredible. And we had 200 applications of people that were willing to come for 2 months. We had no idea what we were doing, and they still just came. Right?
This makes me so bullish on the whole scene that there's this many people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually started receiving applications for the second cohort, which is going to start. It's going to be May and June. And we already have a bunch of incredible people that want to come, and they just want to build. There is no promise of anything. There is no VC funding at the end. There's absolutely nothing. It's just, let's get together. That's it. But clearly, I think it's about the high bandwidth of being able to spend a bunch of time in all kinds of contexts with really, really smart people that are looking at things from all different points of view. There's something, it's just magic. It's just, you get the ingredients together and it just works.
I think you're underselling it because there is a promise of something, barbecue every Friday, which is, I think in my opinion, that justified my existence here for two months. No, that definitely, I mean, there was lots of very cool things that are coming out of the cohort as products, but I think we've actually elevated the thinking about Nostr and building in 2 months to an unprecedented level that would take us probably years to do it asynchronously over Nostr or meeting at the conferences for a shorter time, whereas here we had the time to have multi-day conversations, iterate on the ideas, figure out, okay, this doesn't work, or maybe I should join this project, or as we did with Giorgio, we essentially put together 3 projects that we were working on to make a proof of concept.
Yeah, and I think there's something to the accelerant part. We didn't want to call it an accelerator because there's a lot of imagery of what an accelerator is, and we wanted to steer clear from that. But the accelerating part, I think there's something important to it. I have this feeling that there is a window of time in which all these freedom technologies that we're working on work if they have enough momentum. The way I see it is there is for the past couple of decades, there is a shift in the balance of culture overall, where things stop being stable and they are like a little bit in flux, and they can tumble towards like the CBDC, surveillance, just total control, and you are a total pleb, the web vision, just to summarize it. And it could also tumble towards more the freedom tech. And I think we have like this window of opportunity in which we can make a lot of damage, we can make a lot of impact on towards which side it falls. So to me, that's also a little bit of why I spend so much time and so much effort in trying to push it as much as I can in as many directions as I can, because I think the work that is being done now has a disproportionate impact than if it were to be done in 10 years from now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we can mention one of the slogans that came up during the cohort. You're not going to jail if you build it right, which I think it sounds funny, but it's important because things built right means that you can't drag your users, you won't drag your users, but also you as a builder, as a company, it limits your liability, your costs with everything. That's why self-custody is important, because it's not because it's right, not only because it's right, but because it makes it easier for you as a builder to not care about that. So I think there's lots of things to be explored, how to actually build them right instead of what's easy and maybe gets you to the first seed round, which is not necessarily what projects that were created here are going to get out of this. But they definitely, I think we all learned a lot from each other just by how we're thinking and approaching stuff. And there was lots of ideas that wouldn't come out of it just because we're all in our own basements building stuff. And the high bandwidth communication enabled to, as Stuart mentioned, to shed away all the bullshit, because somebody would just tell you after 5 beers, like, this just sucks.
Maybe you could explain more of G-Hole, because I think it's a good example of that. If you're building something for Nostr, it's complementary, like by default. Like the fact that you're using Nostr in any way as your identity or as your storage or as communications or for cryptography, those things there's like a magnetic attraction and they're complementary. And that I saw 3 separate demos from 3 separate people, and at the end of the cohort, this is one demo from one team.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the beauty of it. So essentially, G-Hole is proof of concept for a proof of concept. So it started with 2 projects. It's G's Nostr Rocket, which is essentially a platform for collaboration of individuals without the need to incorporate an entity. So
yeah, the short slogan for that is the separation of business and state.
It's also kind of like GitHub.
yes, exactly. So then we built on top of the project that Dennis was working on, which is GitOver Hole Punch, and we combined that. So if you're building a company, you need a repository for code, for example, and then we said, okay, we want to also make it usable, because Freedom Take is not always usable, as we all know. It's just Freedom Take. So with G-Hole, we also added a compatibility layer. So you also not just have Hole Punch access to it, you have HTTP compatibility. So all the existing tooling will work, but you still have uncensorable repository. And at the same time, this will help to prove the Nostr Rocket concept of you can build a product in a decentralized way. You can have automatic splits of the revenue that the product earns based on the merit that you put in. So it's a inception of a project.
You guys are dog-fooding this method of building a company.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of the things, going back to the build it right, I think that was one of the overall ideas that we were going back and back and back to. What do you think? It's building it right versus building it wrong?
Build it right. What do you mean? What is the question?
Yeah, like what
Build it wrong.
how do you know if you're building it wrong, and how do you know if you're building it right? And also, and this is for all of you. Also, how can you build a business? Because we know some of the traits of building it right and building it wrong. How can you build a profitable business if you're building it right?
I don't know how to make a profitable business. That's we're still trying to figure that out. Obi gave a really good talk right at the end, talking about putting the philosophy first. And so, Mutiny, we've had a pretty strong roadmap for what we wanted to build. We knew we wanted to build a wallet that we would like, and that we also wanted that wallet to be usable to a new coiner that we'd want to onboard, or our Bitcoiner friends would want to onboard somebody new. So we've been on that mission, and we've been, kind of grabbing technology as we go to fulfill that. And we're actually getting pretty close to capping off what our plans have been. And so that has kind of put us in this mode of like, well, what do we do next? And there's so much interesting technology out there. There's so much fun stuff to work on, and so many problems to be solved. And so, but Obi was really talking about that, at least as a CEO, like the philosophy of his company is like 50% of his time. And I forget what the other percent.
People, process, product.
Yeah, so 50% philosophy, 40% people as a CEO, and then the people will come up with the process, and that process will come up with the product. So as a team, we've been just, since that talk, and, obviously over this whole 2 months, been talking a little bit about what our philosophy is, what is attractive to us, what's important to us. And so we're using that to guide us, because ultimately the thing that we're going to build well and the thing that we're going to build best is the thing that we are truly passionate about and really aligned with, and that we think is important. Because obviously you don't want to build something that's not important, but also it's kind of hard to build something that you don't think is important. So, we're not some like 2,000 employee SaaS company, that's just like putting forms together and kind of just going through the day, clocking in. Like this is a mission for us. And so honing in on what we believe is the most important and the most impactful is going to guide what is right to build.
I think one of the things, to answer your question, to Paul, is also not everything needs to be a business. There's a lot of things that will come out of this, or any projects that just can't work as a business, but are incredibly important to actually be built. So I think one part of build it right is just build it first and then figure it out if it's a business, because otherwise if you decide, oh, I have this idea and I want to build a business out of it, you will change the idea subconsciously to try to fit it into a business model to make it attractive for VCs and everything, versus if you actually just build it and see where it takes you first. You don't need to spend 6 years. There are tons of cool shit built in 2 months here. So you can do it fast and then iterate on that, instead of saying, oh, this is going to be cool, let me create a pitch deck while I write the code.
I feel that, and I love that, and I'm a hyper-note. It's not a business, So I definitely like building things for fun or for the good of the world. I think of open source in the best sense is kind of like charity. It's something that I want the world to be better, and I am going to give of myself. Like I'm giving. It's not costless to me. It costs me something to do this, but I'm giving it because I think it's it's good for people. Or sometimes it's just playing around. I do think though that we are heavily funded by businesses that do make money. And so trying to figure out how to be a business that makes money while staying, with our values as Bitcoiners and as, Nostr people. I think that's a challenge, but I think that's an important challenge to solve, because otherwise we will always be in this playground of doing the good things, but funded by bad guys. Like that can't work forever.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, to me, the economic pressure, it reveals truth throughout everything. So like relay monetization and like all these questions, just let it play out. If it's, I also build a bunch of stuff that has absolutely no way of becoming a business or in any shape or form. It's interesting that when you said what you just said, that you went, and then have a bunch of employees, like you said before, about the SaaS company with 2,000 employees, or and you're VC funded and all these things. I think we are matching we have this association of building a business with immediately knowing what the revenue line is and what the business model is and having funding and on all these things. And I think those are not the same thing, especially the VC part. I mean, like Demos, for example, is a good example. It's especially not, it's not the same thing. They are different stages and they do not need to happen at all. Like the VC funding does. That's something that I think is very cool, that a lot of the stuff that we're building, it's giving a new air to old ideas, like bootstrapping a business or selling something for money.
Yeah, or going further and separating state and business as the Nostr ideas, which is essentially a new way for open source to collaborate and people to do stuff without the overhead, without the state control. It's just 4 people getting together, believing in an idea and trying to build it. And Nostrock, it gives you the tooling to collaborate in a very trustless way, split the revenue, and create that small cash flow business. Maybe it becomes huge, maybe it doesn't, but it just provides another alternative to how to actually do this.
I've sort of been thinking about this idea. I was just thinking about it because of this discussion. Like, there's kind of like two broad classes of Nostr business ideas or Nostr product ideas. And one of them is like just the really easy thing where you're just like, what is a Web 2 thing? And then how do we make it completely indestructible? Like just undeplatformable Reddit, undeplatformable hosting, and you just kind of go through the list and go like, are people having a problem where they don't actually own the thing that they're doing? Yes. Okay. Is it possible to make on Nostr? Of course it is, because Nostr is just signed JSON. It works the same way. The key thing is that you can't kill the thing on Nostr. So that's like actually huge utility, just simply because there's this resistance to the political constraints that are on the thing. And that's almost like, it's sort of, it connects to that idea, like, if you build it right, you don't go to jail. That actually is like a huge revealer of signal and can give you really great ideas architecturally that you probably should have done anyways. But because you were building out of this constraint, it like forces you to make the thing decentralized, not take the shortcuts, because you're like trying to make, you're asking questions like, well, is the user going to be hosting someone's data? Like, how, like what's like the threat model for the user? And most of the time, if you're building like a Web 2 app, you don't really think of like the threat model for the user from the government. You think of it like from like spammers or something like that. So that's kind of like the first reason, is just clone the thing and make it indestructible. But then there's like a kind of more interesting, kind of like less obvious kind of Nostr idea. And those are things that just, it's not that there is a Web 2 version of them. It's just that simply like this really wouldn't have been possible otherwise, or like no one even thought to do it. And that's kind of like the data vending machine, probably a good example of that, is like, computers talking to each other, doing microtransactions. You push one button and it sets off this whole Ruby Goldberg machine of like a market, basically, that like the intelligence of a market that's doing a bunch of stuff to give you a thing. That's like not something that exists in the Web 2 world. So we're not really cloning anything there. It's actually kind of new, but yeah, so I don't know. That's kind of a good, interesting lens, I think.
That first model that you talked about, where you make it unstoppable, if the business model in the Web 2 world was monetizing the rug, like, hey, we have a rug, pay us so we don't pull the rug.
Monetizing the rug. I love that.
If all you're doing is getting rid of the ability to rug, and that was the only way that product was monetized, that's going to be kind of hard to monetize in the Web 2 world.
Nostr kills a lot of business ideas.
Yeah.
That's
at the same time, it does make a lot of businesses easier. I mean, we've been through a bunch of generations of this, of like, there was a time when you built for the web that you had to build your own web server, or there were proprietary, very expensive, SaaS web servers. And then Apache came along. Now it's open source, and that dramatically cheapened and made so many more people able to deploy. And so we've been through a bunch of generations of this with the web. Cloud was one of the big ones. And so Nostr is like this, where it makes us even smaller business is capable of doing so much more than they would have been able to otherwise.
Yeah, one of the things that interests me a lot is how when you build something on Nostr, it becomes, if you do it in the right way, and there's definitely ways of doing it in the wrong way, if you build it in the right way, the stuff that you're building goes throughout all of Nostr. So like data vending machine is a good example, that you build like this algorithm to do Picasso style drawings. That becomes available to all the clients that want to use it. You want to do stores like with Blossom. You don't have to build it in your company. Not every single Nostr company or not every single Nostr project has to rebuild absolutely the entire stack. They can use a provider that gives them the stack that they want to do. So if they want to do algorithms, they can use a bunch of decentralized platform market to find an algorithm that they want. So new business can be built. One of the things that I think is super cool, like Nostrudel, for example, has a bunch of really cool features. And he, like, Nostr doesn't need to implement absolutely everything. So, for example, for long form, like medium style articles, it doesn't need to have like this nice rendering and implement all the things. It can say, oh yeah, go to this other thing and link to this other project that will take care of that. The identity is there, the web of trust is there, everything is there, and you can go to a UI that is a product that is optimized for that flow.
Yeah, Nostr is essentially the ultimate composability layer because we all built on top of things that someone else has built. So it actually lowers the cost to build a prototype significantly because, as you said, you don't need to build everything your own, or all of a sudden you're using 5 SaaS APIs to speed up the process. But before the first user, you have $300 a month cost to just render everything. Versus here, you build a small interface, you use a DVM, you use satellite CDN, you have payments already working, there is no Stripe applications, it just works out of the box. So I think it enables us to express ideas very quickly in a very different way that it was possible before, because it was always, no, I'm going to build this for my own, I'm going to monetize the users, I'm going to hoard all the data. Versus here, the fact that the users can leave is a feature, because you don't need a database of the users. You don't need to implement a good authentication system. That comes for free.
Yeah, just to illustrate this a little bit and talk my own bag. Hypernote, all I did was let people publish HTML templates to Nostr, and then render those back, and run these queries and stuff to display these composable pieces. But I got publishing for free, storage for free, profiles, comment box,
Users.
I composed the long form stuff. So you publish a long form and people can already be commenting on that and not even use Hypernote at all. So if I had this dumb idea, and I would have never built it, because that's way too many things to build for such a dumb idea. But Nostr lets you make your dumb idea.
I think on that point of composability, that's like, it seems like in Nostr, whenever you start having conversations about like what you really need to do to accomplish something, it seems like it always comes down to web of trust. Like web of trust is this thing that's this bedrock that's kind of underlying a lot of different stuff. And maybe the reason why that is because it's kind of like in practice the most composable thing of Nostr, because it's something that translates, it's really transferable across contexts. Like if you for instance, like if you like interact with some people on like a Twitter style client, and you think and you follow them, presumably this person's not a spammer. Like a contact list, like me and Fran have been talking about this because he's building Zap Store, which is like leverages the web of trust for app downloads. So like that's a perfect example of it, is that really a lot of the interactions boil down to web of not spam. It's not necessarily trust, but it is like solving the main problem with the internet, which is going to get about 1 million times worse now with AI, where like I think I've been joking, like I think words are about to become a shitcoin if they weren't already. Like language is getting inflated, so it's like scrambling for some new basis of scarcity that to use as like a proxy for like what's even real. Like the internet, if you thought the internet things were postmodern now, it's gonna get even more postmodern. Like we're gonna just like it, yeah. The Etch-a-Sketch is gonna almost like we're just gonna fade into the foreground here and like have like a whole new thing. So Nostr it might win just because it's like the last thing standing, the last thing that is even coherent. And the web of trust is like the highly composable like thingy that kind of like stitches together all the apps, and even actually maybe sort of like reveals apps that you should build because there's this web of trust that's almost like stenciling in that little thing. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
Just to illustrate a couple of those, like for Mutiny, if you search, you can globally search Nostr users and pay them. Well, which one's real and which one just spun one up? Well, I would like some web of trust thing, like this is followed by Pablo. Okay, that's probably a real one.
Yeah, one of the really, really cool things that is just a property of the universe, in a way very similar to cryptography, is that computing web of trust is super easy. It's super trivial. Like it's very hard to fake, very, very hard to fake. And it's very easy to compute. And in a way, it's kind of like how Bitcoin works, where it's just P equals MPs. It's a property of the universe that it just happens to work, that private public key cryptography works. And Web of Trust is also simple and it works. We were talking a lot about Web of Trust, and a lot of people come with like these really complex schemes of, okay, if you use eCash to validate this and that adds a bunch of complexity. Whereas computing the Web of Trust is so simple, which is a beautiful thing, because one of the things that worries me sometimes is increasing the complexity of creating new Nostr applications and hardening the existing Nostr applications. If we make the protocol more and more and more complex, that means that creating something new, starting from scratch, is harder. And I think that's why a lot of other protocols fail. Or don't succeed, is that you either use their SDK or you just don't participate because you cannot implement the protocol by yourself.
Our time is up here. I want to thank Gigi, Pablo, and Martin, and everybody on this island who've been so welcoming to us. And this has been such a wonderful time. So thank you so much.
Thank you everybody for coming here. It was, having you guys here was amazing.
Come to the demos. It's at 3?
At 3 p.m. on the workshop stage, we're going to have, everybody's going to demo. It's going to be wild. We've been saying this embrace the chaos thing in Nostr. It's going to be chaos, so it's going to be cool.